Keep still, boss, she
We need
whispered.
to talk about
Shy
the deal. It's
Waitress
getting
warned the
complicated.
Mafia boss before a brutal betrayal. In a world where silence means survival, one whisper changed everything. Isla Ven was invisible, a shy waitress serving wine to men who commanded fear with a glance. But when she saw death approaching Cashinvale, the city's most dangerous Mafia boss, instinct overrode terror. 2 words, 1 breath, a warning that saved his life and shattered hers. Now, pulled into his dark empire, Isla must uncover the truth about her brother's murder, survive betrayal from within, and face an impossible choice: freedom or the monster who's claimed her heart. The story doesn't end here. Subscribe to Mafia Soul to see what happened next, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. The first time Isla saw him, she didn't. Not really. She noticed the silence instead, the way Ravello's dining room seemed to hold its breath. The murmur of polite conversation died mid-sentence. Wine glasses paused halfway to lips. Even the kitchen, visible through the service window, fell into a rhythm that felt more like caution than efficiency. Table 9, Marco hissed, materializing beside her with a leather-bound wine list pressed against her ribs. Corner booth. You're up. She followed his gaze across the candlelit space, past the low-hanging chandeliers that cast amber shadows on white tablecloths. The corner booth, Ravello's most coveted seat, always reserved, rarely filled, was no longer empty. That's Cashinvale, Marco whispered, his voice tight. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't linger. And for the love of God, don't spill anything. Isla's fingers tightened around the wine list. Everyone in the city knew that name. Even girls like her who'd spent the last year buried in grief and debt after her brother's overdose, trying to disappear into the background of her own life. But whispers traveled through restaurant kitchens. Cashinvale owned half the docks. Men who crossed him weren't found. And now he sat in her section. Why me? She managed. Marco's expression softened, just barely. Because you don't talk. You're practically invisible, Isla. Stay that way. Invisible. Yes. She'd perfected that art in the months since her brother died, moving through the world like smoke, never quite solid enough to be noticed. It had kept her safe, kept her employed, kept the questions about her brother's connections buried where they belonged. She smoothed her black apron and approached table 9. 3 men occupied the curved booth. 2 flanked the edges, broad-shouldered, expressionless, their tailored suits unable to hide the weight beneath their jackets. Guards. Their eyes tracked her movement with mechanical precision. But the man in the center commanded the space without moving. Cashinvale sat with his attention fixed on something in his hands, a phone, perhaps, though she couldn't see past the width of his shoulders. Dark hair, precisely cut, caught the candlelight. He wore no tie with his midnight suit. The collar of his white shirt opened just enough to reveal the edge of ink curling up his throat. Tattoos decorated his knuckles where they rested against the table. Isla stopped at a respectful distance, careful not to cast a shadow. Good evening, gentlemen. May I start you with? Movement caught her peripheral vision. Luca, one of the newer waiters, was approaching from the bar. Too quickly. His smile stretched wrong across his face. His right hand trembled near his jacket pocket. Time crystallized. She saw the glint of metal, the unnatural angle of his approach. The way Cashin's guards hadn't noticed yet, their attention momentarily divided. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She leaned in close, wine bottle still in hand, close enough that her breath brushed Cashin's ear, close enough to smell expensive cologne and something darker underneath, smoke and danger. Keep still, boss, she whispered. Her hand slipped, sending the wine bottle crashing to the floor. The sound shattered the silence. Cashin's guards moved instantly, intercepting Luca mid-stride. The syringe clattered from his grip, rolling across marble like a fallen secret. Chaos erupted. Shouts, the crack of bone, Luca's scream cut short. But through it all, Cashinvale hadn't moved. He turned his head slowly, impossibly calm, until his eyes met hers. They were darker than the candlelight suggested, ancient and calculating, weighing her with an intensity that stripped away every layer of invisibility she'd ever built. Interesting, he said quietly, his voice like velvet wrapped around a blade. She'd saved his life. And somehow, she knew with absolute certainty, hers would never be the same. The rain came suddenly, turning the streets outside Ravello's into rivers of neon and shadow. Isla slipped through the staff exit, her hands still trembling from what had happened inside. The chaos had finally settled. Police called, statements given. Luca hauled away in handcuffs while screaming about debts and desperation. She just wanted to disappear into the storm and pretend none of it had touched her, leaving without saying goodbye. Isla froze. The voice came from behind her, smooth and dark as the rain-slicked pavement. Cassian Vale stood beneath the awning, somehow untouched by the downpour. His guards flanked him at a distance, black umbrellas raised like silent sentries. He'd shed his jacket. His white shirt glowed ghost-pale in the dim light, the ink on his throat more visible now. I need to get home, she managed, clutching her thin coat tighter. No. He moved closer, each step deliberate. You don't. Excuse me. Lucas saw your face, Isla. Her name sounded different in his mouth, intimate, possessive. He saw you warn me, which means whoever sent him knows you interfered. The rain drummed harder against the awning. Isla's heart matched its rhythm. I didn't do anything wrong, she said, hating how her voice shook. That won't matter to them. Cassian tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle requiring careful solution. You're marked now. A loose end. And loose ends in my world don't stay loose for long. Fear crystallized in her chest. What are you saying? I'm saying you need protection. He gestured toward the street where a black car idled, rain streaming off its polished surface. Get in the car. It wasn't a request. I can't just. I have work tomorrow. I have bills. You won't have anything if you're dead. His tone shifted, gentler but no less absolute. Please, Isla, let me keep you safe. The plea surprised her more than the command had. She looked at the car, then back at Cassian Vale, the man whose life she'd saved, whose world operated by rules she'd spent years avoiding. Every instinct screamed to run. But where would she run to? Her tiny apartment with its broken lock? The bus stop, where anyone could be waiting? Cassian extended his hand. Not grabbing, not forcing, offering. Against every rational thought, Isla took it. His palm was warm and rough with old scars. He guided her through the rain toward the car, his body angled to shield her from the worst of it. The door opened as if by magic. Leather interior. Tinted windows. The smell of expensive cologne and something sharper. Gun oil, maybe. She slid inside. Cassian followed, settling beside her with fluid grace. The door closed with a definitive click. The world outside became abstract, city lights smearing across rain-streaked windows as the car pulled smoothly into traffic. Inside, the silence felt thick enough to drown in. Where are we going? Isla asked, her voice barely audible. Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. Cassian turned to look at her fully for the first time since the restaurant. In the shifting light, his features seemed carved from shadow and stone. But his eyes, those dark, calculating eyes, held something unexpected. Curiosity. Fascination. You didn't hesitate, he said quietly. When you saw the threat, you didn't freeze. You didn't run. You warned me. It was instinct. Instinct, he repeated, as if testing the word. Most people's instinct around me is self-preservation. Yet yours was to save me. His gaze intensified. Why? Isla didn't have an answer. Or rather, she had several, none of which made sense even to herself. I don't know, she whispered. Something flickered across Cassian's face, satisfaction, maybe, or recognition. He leaned back, his shoulder brushing hers in the confined space. You will, he said. The city lights faded behind them, swallowed by rain and distance. Isla watched her reflection ghost across the window, pale, lost, utterly out of her depth. She'd wanted peace. She'd wanted invisibility. Instead, she'd whispered two words that changed everything. And now, trapped in silk and shadow beside a man who commanded violence with the same ease he commanded silence, Isla realized the truth that made her blood run cold. She wasn't being rescued. She was being claimed. Isla woke to the sound of waves. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed beneath her was too soft, the sheets too fine. Salt air drifted through partially open windows, carrying the cry of distant gulls. Then memory crashed back. The restaurant, the whisper, the car ride into darkness. Cashin Vale's world. She sat up slowly, taking in her surroundings. The room was elegant but sparse. Cream walls, minimal furniture, a single painting of a stormy seascape. Prison or sanctuary, she couldn't yet tell. Through the windows, she glimpsed manicured grounds dropping away toward cliffs and an endless stretch of gray ocean. A fortress disguised as a home. When she ventured into the hallway, two men in dark suits straightened immediately. Not threatening, but watchful. One nodded with something resembling respect. "Miss Venn, Mr. Vale said you're free to move about the estate. Breakfast is in the south wing." Free to move. The words rang hollow when guards tracked her every step. She found Cashin in what appeared to be a study, walls lined with books, a massive desk facing floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the sea. He stood with his back to her, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and sharp. "I don't care what it costs. Find the leak." He ended the call before noticing her reflection in the glass. When he turned, his expression shifted, the cold strategist replaced by something softer, though no less intense. "You're awake. Good. We need to talk. About why I'm being held prisoner." "Protected," he corrected, moving toward a sidebar to pour amber liquid into two glasses. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Isla stayed near the doorway, maintaining distance. "Because it feels remarkably similar." Cashin's mouth twitched, almost a smile. He offered her a glass. She didn't take it. "Fair enough." He set both glasses down. Luca wasn't working alone. The syringe contained a paralytic, meant to incapacitate, not kill. Someone wanted me vulnerable for what came next. What does that have to do with me? Everything. He pulled a folder from his desk, laying it open. Even from across the room, Isla recognized the photo paper-clipped to the first page. Her brother. Younger, smiling. Alive. Her breath caught. "Where did you get that?" "From my files." "Isla, your brother worked for the Halvern Syndicate before his death. He was deep in their trafficking operation, the one they've been running through my docks to frame me." "No." She stepped forward, hands clenched. "Noah overdosed." The coroner said. The coroner said what someone paid him to say. Cashin's voice gentled, which somehow made it worse. "Your brother was trying to get out. He came to me with evidence, shipping manifests, names, dates. I promised him protection." The room tilted. Isla gripped the edge of the desk. "You're lying." "I wish I was." He moved closer, careful, like approaching a wounded animal. "Someone discovered Noah was talking. They made it look like an overdose, made sure the right people looked the other way. I've spent the last year trying to find who gave the order. Why should I believe you?" "Because I kept his phone." Cashin pulled a device from his jacket. Scratched, outdated, painfully familiar. "I couldn't give it to you before. Too dangerous. But now that you're already involved." He unlocked it, scrolled, then handed it to her. The screen showed a draft message, never sent, timestamped 2 days before Noah died. "Isla, if anything happens to me, trust Cashin Vale. He knows what they took. He'll keep you safe. I'm sorry for everything. N." The phone slipped from Isla's numb fingers. Cashin caught it, caught her elbow too when she swayed. "Your brother died trying to expose them," he said quietly. "And now they think you have what he hid, the original records. That's why Luca was sent. That's why you're not safe." Isla pulled away from his touch, her world fracturing. Everything she'd believed about Noah's death, the shame, the waste, the senseless tragedy, had been a carefully constructed lie. "Who?" Her voice emerged raw. "Who killed him?" "Someone close to me. A mole inside my organization." Cashin's jaw tightened. "I haven't found them yet. But I will." She looked up at him. This dangerous man who'd apparently tried to save her brother, who now claimed to be protecting her. The line between truth and deception blurred until she couldn't tell which side she stood on. "Noah trusted you," she whispered. "Yes. And he died anyway." Cashin didn't flinch from the accusation. "Yes. Which is why I won't let the same happen to you." Outside, waves crashed against the cliffs. Inside, the truth crashed against everything Isla thought she knew. Her brother hadn't been weak. He'd been brave. And his bravery had gotten him killed. The cameras were found at 3 a.m. Isla heard the commotion from her room. Sharp voices, hurried footsteps, the unmistakable sound of furniture being moved. She pulled on the robe someone had left folded at the foot of her bed and cracked open her door. The hallway blazed with light. Men in tactical gear swept through rooms with handheld devices, their movements precise and grim. One of them emerged from the bedroom next to hers holding something small and black between gloved fingers. A camera, no bigger than a button. Her stomach dropped. Miss Vin. One of Cashin's guards appeared at her elbow, his face professionally blank. Mr. Vale requests your presence in the security room. Now, it wasn't a request. She followed him through corridors she hadn't yet explored, descending stairs into what could only be described as a command center. Monitors lined the walls, displaying feeds from every angle of the estate. In the center stood Cashin, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, his expression carved from ice. The temperature in the room seemed to drop when she entered. How many? Cashin's voice was laced with a quiet fury that made even his guards step back. 4 in the guest wing, answered a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, his fingers flying across a keyboard. 2 in the hallways, 1 in her bathroom, 1 behind the headboard. All top-grade surveillance. Military spec. Isla's skin crawled. Someone had been watching her sleep, watching her change, watching everything. When were they planted? Cashin asked, still not looking at her. Based on the firmware, sometime in the last 48 hours. After she arrived. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Cashin finally turned. His eyes found hers across the room, and she saw something terrifying there. Not suspicion, but recognition. Understanding. Leave us, he said quietly. The room emptied in seconds. Only the hum of electronics remained. Isla wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. You think I? No. He crossed to her in 3 strides, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. I don't think you did anything. That's the problem. I don't understand. These cameras weren't here before you arrived. My team sweeps this estate daily. It's protocol. Which means someone planted them after I brought you here. His jaw tightened. Whoever did this knew you'd be in that room. They knew I'd bring you here. The implications settled over her like frost. You're saying someone expected me to save you. I'm saying someone planned for it. Cashin's voice dropped to something dangerous. The attack at Ravello's, Luca's positioning, your shift assignment, none of it was random. They wanted you to see the threat. Wanted you to warn me. Wanted me to bring you here. But why? Because you're leverage. He said it simply, brutally. Your brother's sister, delivered right into my home. A perfect weakness, gift-wrapped. Isla's breath caught. You think this was a trap? For you. For both of us. A knock interrupted them. The security chief entered, tablet in hand, his expression grim. Sir, we've traced the camera network's relay point. The signal was routed through an encrypted server, but we found the access logs. And the last login was from inside the estate. From a device registered to Rafe Mendez. The name landed like a gunshot. Cashin went very still. When he spoke, his voice could have cut glass. Where is he now? In the East Wing. He doesn't know we've found the cameras. Keep it that way. Cashin turned back to Isla, and for a brief moment, something almost protective flickered across his features. You're being moved to the Master Wing. My personal quarters. No one enters without my direct authorization. Cashin. Rafe has been with me for 8 years. His hands curled into fists. If he's the mole, if he's been feeding information to the Halverns, if he had anything to do with your brother's death. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The mansion suddenly felt less like a fortress and more like a trap. Walls that were supposed to protect now hiding knives in the dark. What are you going to do? Isla whispered. Cashin's smile was cold and sharp enough to draw blood. What I do best. Hunt. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at her with an intensity that stole her breath. Stay close to me, Isla. Trust no one else. Not even the men you've seen guarding you. Until I root out every traitor in this house, you're safest where I can see you. The door closed behind him, leaving her alone with glowing monitors and the terrible knowledge that safety was an illusion. The walls meant to protect were watching. And somewhere behind them, Betrayal was sharpening its blade. Isla couldn't sleep. The master wing was quieter than her previous room, insulated by thick walls and Cashin's constant presence in the adjoining study. But silence only amplified her thoughts. Cameras watching her sleep, Rafe's potential betrayal, and the ghost of her brother haunting every shadow. At 2 a.m., she gave up on rest. Noah's phone sat on the nightstand where Cashin had left it after showing her that first message. He'd said she could look through it, search for anything that might help. She'd been too shattered then. But now, wrapped in darkness and uncertainty, she needed answers more than comfort. She unlocked the screen with trembling fingers. The photo gallery made her chest ache. Noah smiling at birthday dinners she remembered, standing outside their childhood apartment. A selfie with her from 2 Christmases ago. Before everything fell apart. Before the lies. She navigated to his messages next. Most were mundane, friends, work schedules, grocery lists. But buried in his drafts folder, she found something that stopped her heart. 7 unsent messages. All addressed to her. All time-stamped in the weeks before his death. The first was the one Cashin had shown her. But there were others. Isla, I'm in deeper than I thought. They're not just moving drugs. It's worse. So much worse. I found shipping manifests. Women. Girls. Routes through Cashin's territory, but he doesn't know. They're framing him. If I disappear, look for the red ledger. It has everything. Names, dates, payments. It's the only proof. I'm scared, Isla. But I can't let this continue. Someone has to stop them. Vale promised protection. I think I can trust him. I have to trust him. Tell Mom I'm sorry. Tell her I tried to be better. If anything happens to me, trust Cashin Vale. He knows what they took. Isla's vision blurred. These weren't the words of an addict spiraling into oblivion. These were the words of someone fighting, terrified but determined, trapped but brave. Her brother had been a hero, and they'd murdered him for it. A sound made her look up. Cashin stood in the doorway between their rooms, shirt sleeves rolled up, hair disheveled from running his hands through it. His eyes found the phone in her lap. You found them, he said quietly. Why didn't you show me all of these? Because I needed you to be ready. He moved into the room, maintaining careful distance. The first one was enough to prove I tried to help him. The others, they tell a darker story. Trafficking. The word tasted like ash. He wrote about women and girls being moved through your docks. Cashin's expression hardened. The Halvern Syndicate has been running a trafficking network for years. They've been using my shipping routes, forging my manifests, making it look like I'm complicit. If that evidence goes public before I can prove my innocence, every law enforcement agency in the country will come for me. Every rival family will see weakness and attack. And my brother found proof. He found the red ledger, a physical record of every transaction, every route, every person involved. Names that would burn the Halvern Empire to ash and take half of East Harbor's underworld with it. Cashin sat on the edge of the bed, exhaustion evident in the slump of his shoulders. But before he could deliver it to me, he died. The ledger disappeared, and everyone assumed it died with him. Isla looked down at the phone, at her brother's desperate words glowing in the darkness. But it didn't. No. Whoever killed Noah believed he'd hidden it somewhere. They've been searching for a year, growing increasingly desperate. He met her eyes. And now they think you might know where it is. I don't. I know. But they don't. Cashin leaned forward, elbows on his knees. This isn't just about revenge anymore, Isla. If we find that ledger, we can expose the entire operation. Free those women. Destroy the people who killed your brother. But it also means painting an even bigger target on your back. She should have been terrified. Should have begged him to let her go, to disappear into witness protection or a new identity far from this world of blood and secrets. Instead, she thought of her brother, 25 and scared but fighting anyway. She thought of the women whose names filled those manifests, invisible victims of invisible monsters. What did they take? She asked, repeating the phrase from Noah's message. Cashin's eyes gleamed with something like admiration. I've been trying to figure that out for months. Your brother was clever. He wouldn't have written it plainly. Isla scrolled back through the messages, reading them again with new understanding. Then she stopped, her breath catching. Tell Mom I'm sorry. she read aloud. But our mother died when we were children. Cashin straightened. What? He's not talking about our actual mother. He's giving me a location. Her hands shook with realization. There's a storage unit. Noah rented it years ago, kept calling it Mom's place because he stored her old things there after we had to sell the house. I haven't been there since. Since he died, Cashin finished. His expression shifted, predatory, focused. He hid the ledger in your mother's storage unit. Isla nodded, her fear crystallizing into something harder. Purpose. We need to get it, she said. It's dangerous. If the Halverns are watching. My brother died for this. She looked up at him, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I'm not letting his death mean nothing. Cashin studied her for a long moment, and something changed in the space between them. She was no longer just the frightened waitress he'd claimed for protection. She was something more. A witness. A key. A weapon. Then we go at dawn, he said, before anyone realizes what we've found. The storm arrived with biblical fury. Thunder shook the mansion's foundation as rain lashed against windows in horizontal sheets. Isla had retreated to the library after hours of planning their approach to the storage unit, her mind too wired for sleep. She'd pulled a book from the shelf without reading the title, seeking distraction in someone else's story. She didn't hear Cashin enter. Didn't know he was there until his voice cut through the storm's rage. You should be resting. We leave in 4 hours. Isla turned from the window. He stood in the doorway, still dressed despite the late hour, tension radiating from every line of his body. Lightning flashed, casting his face in stark relief, all sharp angles and shadows. I can't sleep, she admitted. Neither can I. He moved into the room, closing the door behind him with a soft click that felt impossibly loud. Every time I close my eyes, I see that syringe rolling across the floor. I see Luca's hand moving. I see you leaning close enough to die if you'd miscalculated by even a second. But I didn't. No. He crossed to the bar cart, poured amber liquid into a glass, but didn't drink. You didn't. You saved me with a whisper. Do you have any idea what that means? What you've cost me? Isla's fingers tightened on the book. Cost you? My control. He set the glass down hard enough that liquor sloshed over the rim. I've spent 8 years building walls, Isla, keeping people at a distance, trusting no one completely. It's kept me alive, kept me powerful. And then you appear, this quiet girl serving wine, and suddenly those walls are cracking. I don't understand what you want from me. Everything. The word emerged raw. He moved closer, eating up the space between them. I want to tell you to run. Get far away from this world, from me, before it destroys you the way it destroyed your brother. But I can't. Because I've been watching you for months, Isla. Since the day after Noah died. Her breath caught. What? I promised him I'd protect you. So I had men follow you to work, make sure you got home safely. I knew your schedule, your route, the corner store where you bought coffee every morning. Lightning illuminated his face, and she saw something almost like shame there. I told myself it was obligation, honoring a dead man's last request. But the truth is darker than that. Cashin, you became mine the moment I realized you were real. He was close enough now that she could smell rain and whiskey and danger. Not just Noah's sister, not just a promise to keep, but you. This woman who moves through the world like she's apologizing for existing, who sees violence coming and steps toward it instead of away, who whispers to monsters without flinching. I was terrified, she whispered. I know. That's what makes it extraordinary. His hand lifted, fingers barely grazing her jaw. I should let you go. After we find the ledger, after this is finished, I should give you money and a new identity and send you somewhere I can never find you. But I won't. His thumb traced her lower lip, and heat flooded through her despite every rational warning. Because you said my name without fear, Isla. In a world where everyone either worships or dreads me, you looked at me like I was just a man, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since. She should pull away, should remember that this man commanded violence, that people disappeared on his orders, that his world had already cost her brother's life. Instead, she leaned into his touch. This is insane, she breathed. Yes. His other hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up. Completely. We barely know each other. I know you saved my life. I know you're brave when you think you're weak. I know you read when you can't sleep, and you hold your coffee cup with both hands like you're afraid it'll disappear. His eyes searched hers, dark and consuming. And I know that if I don't kiss you right now, I'll regret it for the rest of my considerably dangerous life. The space between them evaporated. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that stole thought, rough and desperate, and achingly tender all at once. She gasped against his lips, and he swallowed the sound, one hand fisting in her hair while the other pressed against the small of her back, pulling her flush against him. Isla's book tumbled to the floor, forgotten. Her hands found his chest, felt his heart hammering beneath expensive cotton, evidence that he was as undone as she was. "Cashin," she whispered against his mouth, and felt him shudder. "Say it again." "Cashin." The explosion tore through the night. The blast hit the east wing, close enough that books tumbled from shelves, and the chandelier swayed violently overhead. Cashin's body covered hers instantly, driving them both to the floor as glass shattered somewhere in the mansion's depths. Alarms shrieked. Gunfire erupted, sharp cracks puncturing the storm's roar. Cashin pulled her up, his kiss-softened expression hardening into something lethal. "Stay behind me. Move when I move. Don't stop for anything." "What's happening?" "Betrayal," he said simply, drawing a gun from beneath his jacket. "And it's just getting started." Smoke filled the corridors like malevolent fog. Cashin moved through it with lethal precision. Isla pressed close behind him, her hand fisted in the back of his shirt. Gunfire echoed from multiple directions, controlled bursts, professional. Not a random attack. An orchestrated assault. They'd made it halfway to the security room when a figure emerged from the haze. Rafe Mendez stood blocking their path, gun raised, his usually composed face twisted with something ugly. Behind him, the east wing blazed, flames licking up walls and consuming everything Cashin had built. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," Rafe said conversationally, as if they'd met for coffee rather than in the ruins of Betrayal. Cashin stopped, placing himself between Rafe and Isla. His own weapon remained steady, aimed at the man who'd been his right hand for 8 years. "How long?" "Since the beginning." Rafe's smile was bitter. "Did you really think I enjoyed playing second? Watching you build an empire while I cleaned up your messes, took your orders, pretended to be grateful for scraps from your table. I gave you everything. You gave me servitude." Rafe's gun didn't waver. "The Halverns offered partnership. Real power. All I had to do was open a few doors, look the other way at the right moments. Plant some cameras. Make sure certain information reached the right ears." Isla's fingers tightened on Cashin's shirt. "Noah," she whispered. "You killed my brother." Rafe's eyes flicked to her, cold and empty. "Your brother was a problem. Got too curious, started asking questions. The Halverns wanted him gone, and I made it happen. Made it look like just another junkie couldn't handle his fix." He shrugged. "Honestly, I thought that would be the end of it. But then he'd hidden that damn ledger, and no one could find it. So you sent Luca to kill Cashin at the restaurant," Isla said, pieces falling into horrible place. "Knowing I worked there. Knowing I'd react exactly as you did." Rafe's smile widened. Noah had told us about his sister, the shy little thing who noticed everything but never spoke up. "I gambled you'd see the threat, warn Cashin, and he'd bring you here. Right into the heart of his fortress, where we could watch you, follow you, wait for you to lead us to what your brother hid." Cashin's voice dropped to something sub-zero. "The cameras weren't to watch her. They were to watch me, to see how I'd react, what I'd reveal." "Exactly. And you revealed more than you know." Rafe's expression twisted with contempt. "You, Cashin Vale, the man who trusts no one, who feels nothing. You'd burn this entire city for her, wouldn't you? I see it in your eyes." The great untouchable king brought down by a waitress with a soft voice. "You miscalculated," Cashin said quietly. "Did I? Your mansion is burning. My men have surrounded the compound. The Halverns will be here in 20 minutes to finish what we started. You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered," and his eyes flicked to Isla again, venomous, distracted by dead weight. It happened faster than thought. Rafe's gun swung toward Isla. Cashin fired. But Rafe had anticipated it, already diving sideways, his own shot cracking through the smoke. The bullet caught Cashin high in the shoulder, spinning him back. Isla screamed. Cashin fired again and again, each shot precise despite the blood blooming across his white shirt. Rafe stumbled, red spreading across his chest. He looked down at the wounds with something like surprise, then up at Cashin with fading hatred. "You'll never be free of this," he gasped, blood on his teeth. "They'll keep coming. She'll die just like her brother, and you'll—" Cashin's final shot silenced him forever. The body hit the floor as flames roared closer, consuming the walls around them. Cashin swayed, his gun hand dropping as blood poured from his shoulder. "No, no, no." Isla caught him as he fell to one knee. "Cashin, stay with me." "Have to move," he managed, his face gray with pain and blood loss. "More coming. Get out. We're getting out together." She wedged herself under his good arm, taking his weight. He was so much larger than her, solid muscle and determination, but adrenaline gave her impossible strength. They stumbled through smoke and fire, following the route Cashin's failing consciousness could still map. Behind them, the mansion groaned, supports weakening, structure collapsing. Everything he'd built crumbling into ash and memory. They burst into the open air just as the south wing caved in with a thunderous roar. Rain hammered down, mixing with blood and smoke. Isla dragged Cashin toward the garage where one of his armored cars sat waiting, keys still in the ignition, escape plans built into every contingency. She got the door open, shoved him into the passenger seat. He slumped against the leather, breathing shallow, his shirt soaked crimson. "Isla," he whispered as she started the engine. "Save your strength. Listen." His hand found hers on the gear shift, grip weak but insistent. "The storage unit. Get the ledger. Finish this. We'll finish it together. I'm serious." "So am I." She looked at him. This dangerous man who'd killed for her, bled for her, lost everything for her. "You said I became yours. Well, you became mine too. So you don't get to die on me, Cashinvale. Not tonight." Through the rearview mirror, she watched his empire burn. The king had fallen, but the woman who'd saved him once was going to save him again. And this time, she'd make sure he lived long enough to rise. The villa stood like a ghost on the cliffs, shuttered windows, overgrown gardens, paint peeling from salt and neglect. Cashin's mother had died here 20 years ago, and he'd never been able to sell it or return. Until now, when he had nowhere else to go. Isla half carried him through the door as dawn broke gray and cold over the ocean. The interior smelled of dust and memories. Furniture sat draped in white sheets like sleeping specters. But it was dry, defensible, and most importantly, unknown to his enemies. She laid Cashin on a couch after sweeping the sheet away, her hands shaking as she assessed the damage. The bullet had gone clean through his shoulder, which was good. But he'd lost so much blood, an infection was a knife's edge away. First aid kit, he managed through gritted teeth. Kitchen, under the sink. She found it, old but sterile, stocked with the kind of supplies that suggested this safe house had always been meant for emergencies. Antiseptic, gauze, surgical thread, antibiotics. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered, staring at the needle. "Yes, you do." His eyes found hers, fever bright, but steady. "You're braver than you think, Isla Ven. You always have been." So she stitched him, hands trembling but precise, while he breathed through the pain and rain hammered against windows. When she finished, she helped him swallow antibiotics with water, then collapsed beside him, exhausted and terrified, and somehow still alive. "We made it," she said to the ceiling. "We made it," he agreed quietly. The days that followed existed outside of time. Cashin's fever spiked the first night. Isla stayed awake, changing his bandages, pressing cool cloths to his forehead, whispering things she'd never say if he were fully conscious, about fear and trust, and the impossibility of falling for someone in the span of days that felt like lifetimes. When the fever finally broke, he woke to find her asleep in a chair beside him, her hand still holding his. Something in his chest cracked open. As his strength returned, the distance between them dissolved. He'd find her on the widow's walk, staring at the sea, and join her in comfortable silence. She'd cook simple meals from dusty pantry supplies, and he'd watch her move through his mother's kitchen with a belonging that felt inevitable. One evening, as sunset painted the ocean gold and crimson, Cashin found her in what had been his mother's room. She was looking at photographs on the dresser. A beautiful woman with kind eyes, holding a dark-haired boy. "You have her smile," Isla said softly. Cashin picked up a small wooden box from the dresser, opened it. Inside lay a silver pendant on a delicate chain. Simple, but clearly precious. "She wore this every day," he said. "My father gave it to her before he died. It was the only thing she kept of him." He lifted the pendant, and Isla saw the tiny clasp mechanism built into the design. "There's a tracker inside. Press the clasp 3 times, and it sends a distress signal to a secure network I maintain. Anywhere in the world, I'd know you needed me." "Cashin, I can't." "Yes, you can." He moved behind her, fastening the chain around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin, sending shivers down her spine. "Because you're the only one who didn't see a monster. Even when I gave you every reason to." She turned to face him, the pendant resting cool against her collarbone. "I saw someone trying to protect what mattered. You matter." He said it simply, inevitably. "More than the Empire. More than revenge. You matter, Isla." Before she could respond, his phone, one of several burner devices, chimed. A message from his remaining loyal security team. "Storage unit accessed. Package retrieved. Awaiting instructions." They'd gotten into Noah's storage unit. An hour later, encrypted files arrived. Isla's hands shook as she opened the digital folder on Cashin's laptop. Inside was a scan of a leather-bound ledger, every page photographed in meticulous detail. Names, dates, routes, payments. Proof of every woman trafficked through the Halvern operation. Politicians who'd been paid to look away. Police who'd falsified reports. A conspiracy that reached into every level of East Harbor's power structure. And tucked into the final page, a handwritten note. "Cashin, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But this can still save them. Save my sister. Make it mean something. Noah." Isla's vision blurred. Cashin's hand covered hers on the keyboard. "We can end this," he said quietly. "I have contacts, journalists who can't be bought, federal agents outside the Halvern's reach. We leak this, and their empire collapses. Every trafficking route gets exposed. Every victim gets a chance at justice. They'll come for us. They're already coming. But this time, we'll be ready." She looked at him, wounded but unbroken, powerful but choosing to kneel beside her rather than tower above. The man her brother had trusted. The man who'd given her his mother's pendant like a vow. "Then let's finish it," she said. "For Noah. For all of them." Cashin's smile was sharp and satisfied. Together, they worked through the night, compiling evidence, encrypting files, sending them through channels that couldn't be traced back to the villa. By dawn, the story was breaking across every news outlet. The Halvern Syndicate's secrets spilled into daylight like blood from a mortal wound. Victory was close enough to taste. But Isla couldn't shake the feeling that the cost wasn't finished claiming its due. Outside, the ocean crashed against the cliffs, relentless and hungry. And somewhere in the city, their enemies were gathering for one final move. The war lasted 3 weeks. Isla watched from the villa as news reports chronicled the fall of the Halvern Syndicate. Arrests, seizures, high-profile suicides. The trafficking network collapsed like a house built on bones. Women were freed. Names were cleared. Justice, for once, moved faster than corruption. But justice had a body count. Cashin's rivals saw opportunity in the chaos. Old grudges surfaced. Territory disputes ignited into open warfare on East Harbor's streets. And through it all, Cashin fought, not just to survive, but to rebuild something better from the ashes. He came back to the villa only once during those weeks, just long enough to change blood-stained clothes and check that Isla was safe. She tried to tend new wounds, a cut above his eye, bruised knuckles, but he'd pulled away gently. "I can't stay," he'd said. "Not yet. Not while there are still threats circling." "Then let me come with you." "No." Firm but tender. "You've been through enough. You deserve peace, Isla. A normal life." "There's nothing normal about any of this." He'd smiled then, tired and achingly human. "Exactly why you should run while you can." But she hadn't run. She'd stayed in the villa by the sea, the silver pendant always around her neck, waiting for news that never came fast enough. On the 22nd day, Cashin returned at dawn. Isla was on the widow's walk, watching the sun burn through morning fog when she heard the car. Her heart stuttered. She ran down the stairs, through the dusty rooms, out the front door, and stopped. Cashin stood beside a black SUV, leaning slightly as if standing upright cost him. New scars marked his face. His suit was rumpled, stained, but his eyes, those dark, consuming eyes, were clear and focused entirely on her. "It's done," he said simply. "The Halverns are finished. The trafficking networks are exposed. My territory is secure." He paused, and something vulnerable crossed his features. "I came to give you a choice." Isla's throat tightened. "What choice? Freedom or me? You can't have both." He pushed off from the car, closing half the distance between them. "If you choose freedom, I'll give you money, a new identity, a life far from this world. You'll never see me again. Never have to look over your shoulder or wonder if loving me will get you killed. And if I choose you, then you stay? In this world, with all its darkness and danger, you become part of my empire, my life. You accept that I'll always have enemies, that our peace will always be measured in breaths between battles." His voice dropped, raw with emotion. "You accept me, the monster and the man." The ocean crashed below them. Gulls cried overhead. The pendant rested heavy and warm against Isla's chest. She should choose freedom, should take the escape he was offering and build a quiet life somewhere safe, somewhere her brother's ghost wouldn't haunt every shadow. But Noah had trusted this man, had died believing Cashinvale was worth trusting. And in 3 weeks of blood and chaos, Cashin had honored that trust, had exposed the truth, freed the victims, destroyed the people who'd killed her brother, all while trying to keep her out of the crossfire. "I should run," she whispered, taking a step toward him. "Then why are you still here?" His eyes searched hers, desperate and hopeful and terrified all at once. Isla closed the remaining distance between them, her hand lifting to touch his scarred face. "Because I already did once, and it brought me back to you." Something broke in Cashin's expression, relief and wonder, and a love so fierce it stole her breath. He pulled her against him, careful of his healing wounds, but unable to maintain any more distance. His forehead pressed to hers, their breath mingling in the salt air. "I'll spend the rest of my life keeping you safe," he murmured against her lips. "I know. I'll give you everything. Peace, protection, whatever you need. I just need you." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "The real you. Not the king or the monster. Just Cashin." His smile was soft, transforming his scarred face into something almost innocent. He reached up, his fingers tracing the pendant at her throat, his mother's gift, now hers. "Then keep still, Isla Ven," he whispered, echoing the words that had started everything. "You're where you belong." She rose on her toes and kissed him, soft and deep and full of promise. Around them, the world fell silent except for the ocean's eternal rhythm. The shy waitress who'd whispered a warning to save a stranger's life had become something more, a voice that destroyed an empire, a presence that tamed a monster, a love that redeemed a king. And the Mafia boss who'd trusted no one, who'd built walls higher than his mansion, who'd believed himself incapable of softness, had found salvation in 2 whispered words and a woman brave enough to see past his darkness. They stood together on the cliffs as sunrise painted everything gold. The war was over. The ghosts were laid to rest. The whisper had become a promise. And in the ruins of everything they'd lost, they'd found something worth more than empires or revenge or safety. They'd found each other. Sometimes salvation comes in a whisper. Isla Ven saved Cashinvale's life with 2 words, and in return, he gave her a truth more dangerous than any lie. That love can grow in the darkest places, that monsters can choose tenderness, and that the bravest thing isn't running from fear, it's standing still in the face of it. From a quiet waitress to the woman who brought an empire to its knees, Isla proved that courage doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes that whisper changes everything. If you love this tale of danger, devotion, and destiny. Subscribe to Mafia Soul for more stories where love defies the darkness and loyalty is tested by fire. Hit that subscribe button. Your next obsession is just one click away. Welcome to the family. These stories are born in the shadows and told with the heart. See you in the next video.